Hey everyone, welcome to my initial impressions review of the Staccato P. This video will be a little bit of a deep dive, so for my people with short attention spans, I apologize in advance, and I hope you stick around with me, but if you don't, I understand. And I'll try to make it as interesting for you as I can, unfortunately without too much visual stuff to look at other than my hands in this pistol. But anyway. Just some background on my journey with this pistol. I work for a law enforcement agency that approved personally owned Staccato Ps for duty use. I'd been kicking around the idea of buying a 2011 for years, but was honestly just put off by the cost. When the Prodigy hit the market, I was really close to buying one, but right after that happened, we got Staccatos approved for our agency, so I decided to take the plunge. I've had mine for about 6 or 7 months now, and it's right at 1,300 rounds fired. So I feel like I have just enough experience with it to give a solid initial impressions review. I'll kick things off with some of the pros of this pistol. For starters, I absolutely love the way they look. They have clean lines and they kind of blend a modern pistol vibe with the classic aesthetic of 1911. Some double stack 1911s, in my opinion, take things too far, and their pistols just don't look that good. Again, that's just to me. To do a crossover comparison to the car world, the Staccato is like a classic American muscle car that's been spruced up a bit, and some of the other I guess you could call them more competition-oriented double-stack 1911s look to me like an early 2000s Civic with a wing and ground effects, and they just kind of look kind of gaudy, I guess, especially for the price you're paying. Some of the things which contribute to the appearance, like these slide serrations and the grip texture, they're also super functional. So I think this newer grip module texture from Staccato is peak handgun grip texture, and I'd put it up there with the M&P 2.0 grip texture as one of my favorites. Honestly, I wish all handguns had something similar to this. The slide serrations have a surprising amount of bite to them. It's almost to the point where an extended session of manipulations or dry fire will start to chew up your hand. But I'm okay with that personally. I'd rather not lose my grip when it counts at the expense of a little discomfort during practice or any kind of manipulations. I'm also a huge fan of the trigger. It felt pretty heavy initially compared to what I was used to out of previously owned 1911s. But now that I have some rounds through it, it seems to have lightened up and smoothed out a good bit. Really the only con to this trigger is it makes it way easier to burn through ammo super quickly, so you have to be responsible and practice wisely, not just burn through it. Prior to my experience with this pistol, I always used to think people who would rubber band or pin their grip safeties were searching for an answer to a non-existent problem. Lo and behold, when I first started to shoot mine, I had some issues with the grip safety not disengaging. So my grip with this pistol naturally be super high up on the beaver tail. And I found myself experiencing what I thought was a super heavy trigger. So I was a little concerned, but then I realized that it wasn't the trigger pull, it was me not disengaging the grip safety. As I continued to press through the trigger, probably around like 10 to even 12 pounds of pull weight, my hand would compress or shift enough to deactivate the grip safety, and the pistol would fire. I finally put that together and figured out what was going on. And since I didn't really feel like messing with the grip safety, and that's not really kosher on a duty pistol, I learned that I had to adjust my grip a bit to make the issue stop. So for me, I just had to rotate my strong hand grip clockwise a bit. So if you're looking down at it, I just had to come around just a little bit. I'm exaggerating it to make the point, but when I did that, the grip safety issues stopped. This change was made right around the time the trigger was fully broken in, so once I got all that figured out, the resulting trigger press is about all I would ever want from a duty style pistol. The rest of the shooting experience was pleasant. The Staccato is super pointable. It's easy to present consistently to the target. And then under recoil, the effective hammer-fired pistol with the mainspring and the recoil spring working together in cycling the pistol, it just gives you a really nice controllable recoil impulse, which makes it super easy to run fast, and in general just makes for a pretty pleasant shooting experience. With all that positivity now out of the way, I do have some cons that I experienced with this platform. First and foremost would be reliability. So in those 1,300 rounds through the pistol, I've had 12 malfunctions, including stovepipes, a few stovepipes, a double feed, and a few failures to lock back on an empty magazine. And then also I've had 2 times where the magazine ejects the live round that's sitting on the top, and it basically ejects the casing that just got fired, and it also ejects the top round out of the ejection port. I had one dink off the front of my optic and just get sent downrange, and I was pretty confused about that. I'd like to blame these on the ammo I was using, but the majority of the rounds through the pistol I was using duty ammo. The same ammo, and that's the same ammo that I would be carrying on duty and counting on to save my life. With a limited amount of full metal jacket rounds, the pistol seemed to run fine, but I really haven't run too many of those, so it could just be a numbers game there on those working correctly when the duty rounds would not. The lesson from that really is to make sure you thoroughly test your gear and test your ammo that you intend to carry on duty or for defensive purposes. Make sure you know without a doubt it'll work, because sometimes you might shoot 10, 15, 20 because of the expense when it doesn't actually agree with your pistol. Anyway, back to the Staccato. I was pretty bummed about these malfunctions. A lot of them were experienced early on before the 700 or so round mark, but a few were sprinkled in recently as well. One of the main things that pushed me to buy this pistol in the first place was hearing all the reports about phenomenal duty reliability while retaining the shooting experience of a 2011. I was okay eating the substantial cost of buying one, as I'm a believer in the buy once, cry once philosophy, after having been burned quite a few times buying cheap firearms related stuff. So needless to say, I was pretty disappointed in the lack of reliability that I experienced. For context, shooting the same duty ammo through Glocks, I've only had one malfunction ever in 10,000 plus rounds of that ammo. And the single malfunction was a light primer strike in an aftermarket barrel, which I kind of tend to want to blame the barrel for that. So I promise I won't try to mention the G word too much anymore in this review, but it's just hard for me to not make a comparison when that's what I'm used to. One of the weird things about the 2011 community that I've experienced is they tend to kind of dismiss any issues with the system. It seems like a lot of the time someone has issues with the 2011, the community jumps on them. They want to blame the shooter for improper maintenance, poor ammo choice, or anything else that could potentially be the owner's fault. To be clear, I either cleaned and lubed, or just wiped down and lubed after every range session with this pistol. So it wasn't neglected or anything, but those issues still persisted. Beyond just my issues, I had several coworkers who had quite a few malfunctions and had to send theirs back to Staccato for alterations or repairs. And to be fair, Staccato seems to have excellent customer service, and they'll definitely make things right for owners. So I don't want this to sound like a knock against them. They've been taking care of the problems, but it's just frustrating to spend that much money on a pistol and then not have it run out of the box and have to jump through hoops to send it in. It's also pretty inconvenient for someone carrying on duty to have to swap out handguns or buy a second Staccato to run as a spare while their pistol's away being repaired. Though we did have some issues, there were also quite a few pistols that ran flawlessly, and a few that had some hiccups during break-in, but like maybe a stovepipe or two sprinkled in here and there, but that ran better after break-in or greatly reduced their issues after they got through a break-in period. When shooting with my coworkers, I experienced what I call the staccato effect several times. So a malfunction would occur and the shooter would try to kind of sheepishly and quickly clear it, hoping that no one would notice their Gucci pistol not being perfect. Others were anything but sheepish though, including we had one XC owner who was downright pissed at the amount of malfunctions he had, which is understandable given how much one would spend on that pistol. Your mileage may vary, but I wasn't super thrilled with the reliability of the platform after seeing all the positive reviews and the marketing about these pistols running with, again, to use the G word, Glock-like reliability. If you do end up buying one of these pistols, I would be ready to regularly clean it and lube it to keep it running as well as it can. Interestingly, as the round count builds between cleanings, you'll start to feel the slide slow down a little bit and it gets kind of sluggish. Usually this doesn't cause malfunctions, but it's kind of your Staccato's way of giving you a heads up that they might be on the way. So if you feel that, a few drops of lube when you get to that point seem to slick it right up. I won't go down the lube rabbit hole, but we seem to have good luck with Slip 2000. I think it's the Extreme Weapons lube. And then Lucas Extreme Gun Oil for keeping them running well. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Regarding the magazines, I don't have any out here, but they seem to mostly work all right. But they're definitely a quirk of the system. Dropping a loaded mag on concrete can and often will lead to rounds launching from the feed lips. Also, the aluminum base pads they're not fans of being dropped on concrete or asphalt. So if you have a range that's hard surface, they tend to get chewed up pretty quickly. Though to be fair, this seems like mostly an aesthetic thing, and I don't think that particularly is going to affect function all that much. One of my coworkers who is experiencing issues with his pistol sent it back to Staccato, and of the 6 mags that he sent back with it, 3 were replaced when it was there getting fixed. Kudos to Staccato for doing that and making it right, but that's a little bit concerning that so many mags would be bad enough that the manufacturer needed to replace them. And it's just a little bit concerning about the state of the mags in general, even though it's the 3rd generation of Staccato mags. Lastly, with the mags, and this is no secret, but they're just painfully expensive, so I do wish they were a little bit more affordable to get good mags. Next up in the cons column is the Dawson optic plates. Specifically, the 509T one seems to have a little bit more issues than others. We had several people choose to run the 509T plate. Almost all of them, save for 2 that were factory installed, were coming loose on the range. The screws that attach the plate to the slide itself, they accept a super small Allen wrench head, which is not really conducive to taking a lot of torque. Not that you want to really torque the crap out of small screws anyway, but one got rounded out when its owner was tightening it down. Me personally, I had my plate come loose once, despite degreasing it, degreasing the slide, degreasing the screws, and then using blue Loctite per the instructions. I did read that you can use a tiny dab of red Loctite on the screw using a toothpick, just a small amount of red Loctite, being an option to install it. And after what I've seen with these, I think that might actually be a good solution. That being said, I'm about 700 rounds into my 2nd install of the optic, and I haven't had any more issues. So on the 2nd go, I was pretty generous with the blue Loctite, and just wasn't scared of it. I slopped it on pretty well. I know this whole commentary on the optic plates is more of a user error situation, but in my experience with other brands' optic plates, I haven't seen them come loose this regularly, and it does seem to be kind of an isolated thing with the 509T plates for whatever reason. If you do end up installing your own, I advise you to carefully try the red Loctite install, or make sure you're torquing them to spec, and just don't be shy with the blue Loctite. As far as adjusting to the platform compared to a striker fired pistol, I really found no issues there. The only quirk I experienced was running this from a level 3 Safariland holster. Because the slide, I'll try to get it on camera here. Because the slide is taller than some other platforms, the retention strap has a lot more distance to clear. So I found that mine would hang up on the edge of the 509. So if you can see right there in that corner, it would hang up on the 509T, and in general, you have to get really far back on this thumb brake to make sure that it's clearing everything. So just to know, that's not a huge issue, but I did have to focus on that a lot more than I have with my other Safariland level 3 holsters. One thing to note also that I don't see mentioned very often is the significant weight difference between this and a striker fired pistol. That weight difference is part of what contributes to the awesome shooting experience, but it's hard to ignore when you're toting a pistol around for 8 to 12 hours a day, especially for those who are in more active roles. For me personally, I spend a lot of time in brush, covering longer distances by foot, and I'm just on my feet in general a lot. So the weight difference isn't a deal breaker, but after carrying it for a little while, it is noticeable for sure. Another consideration for duty use is the fact that these like to run clean, or at the very least be lubed generously. So if you work in dirty, dusty, muddy, or wet environments, don't expect to treat them like you would a striker fired pistol. For some, that's okay. It's just something to be aware of. Overall, I think it's a decent pistol, but I was really hoping to get a pistol that would run with no compromises. So far it is not that, and I've elected to not carry it on duty. I haven't sold it and don't really have any plans to do that because I really do enjoy shooting it when it's working properly. I'm happy for those out there whose Staccatos are running like a scalded cat. Between the shooting experience, the exclusivity side of 2011 ownership, and the downright good looks, I understand why they have their diehard fans for sure. If my issues persist, I'll probably send mine to Staccato to get looked at. Either way, as I put more rounds through the platform, my perspective might change some. But for now, I've decided to stick with what I know and trust. For those of you that are still here, I appreciate you sticking around. As always, please be sure to drop any comments or questions down below. And if you have any personal experience with Staccatos, be it good or bad, let me know.